Hello, everyone, and welcome to the debut High Stakes Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Greg Ambrosius, and the goal of this podcast is very, very simple. It's actually just to introduce you to the growing high stakes, season long fantasy industry. And to do that, we're going to introduce you to some of the best high stakes players in the industry. I've got one right to my left, right there, Philippe Dussault from Terrebonne, Quebec. Did I say that correctly? Is that
Yeah, it's
right?
pretty good. It's pretty good. Yeah.
Terrebonne?
Yeah.
See, you're from Canada. I'm from northern Wisconsin, so people are going to have a hard time understanding us. We each have Canadian accents, right?
Yeah, mine's probably a little bit more pronounced.
Yeah, I think so as well. But no, I mean, the goal of this podcast, and again, I want to do this at least once a week, is just to introduce people to our champions and to realize that they're just like them, right? They're just baseball fans who want to follow the game and such like that. So I got to say one thing, I haven't seen you in person since March of 2019. You were at the New York
Yeah.
NFBC live events. Obviously, we didn't host any in 2020. Last year, Canadians could not come to the United States, so you didn't get to do any live events. Are we going to see you in 2022 somewhere live?
I'm hoping. I booked two different flights to Vegas. My hotel is booked. Just hoping the restrictions change.
Yeah,
So I think right now we have to do test before I leave, then when I come back,
mhm,
which is kind of a pain. So
yeah.
we'll see. Hopefully that changes soon, and I can be there.
Are you bringing any family members as a reward or not?
No, no,
No.
it's my getaway trip, my weekend off from the three kids.
All right, sounds good. Well, I look forward to seeing you there. We're going to be at the Bellagio March 24th through the 28th, and it's going to be great. We just got to get through this part with COVID and everything, and with baseball. Of course, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that later. Okay, I want to introduce everyone to what you did in 2021, okay, because it's amazing. So write this down, everybody. Phil won $324,000 last year in the NFBC. That is a single season record for us. He entered 3 main event leagues. He won 3 main event league titles. He won the overall main event, becoming our 17th champion in 18 years. Oh, his other teams finished third overall and 21st overall against 645 teams. You won the New York $2,500 auction league and won the auction championship, giving you 2 national titles last year. You won the $1,500 Rotowire Online Championship league. You took second in the Rotowire Online Championship. Okay, you won the $2,500 Draft Champions League. You won the $1,000 Draft Champions League. You won all 3 of your best ball cut line leagues. You won 6 private 12-team best ball leagues. You won a damn Diamond Challenge League even. Here's the resume, Phil. I don't even know if you know this. You entered 22 leagues last year. You won 17 league titles. You finished second in 4 others and third in the other. Can you
Yeah.
believe it? I mean, it's almost unfathomable. I know you're laughing because it's hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. The league titles, the overalls are nice, but cashing in 22 leagues is probably the one that's going to be the hardest to repeat.
Yes.
I know the overalls are tough, but cashing in 22 different leagues, just not to have, because I've had some decent years in the past, but
Yep.
there's always, everyone has a bad team
Yep.
with injuries, and I had a lot of luck on my side. But that every single team managed to cash that one's a little crazy.
That's very crazy. In fact, this Travis Sawchik from The Score, he wrote the story on you for
Yeah.
Canada Papers, I believe it was. He called me up in mid-September. He said he's doing a story on you, and he said, this is the greatest season ever. And I was like, hold on a little bit. I mean, Lindy's had a lot of good seasons, and it
Yeah.
wasn't done. You hadn't won anything at that point. He called me or he emailed me back, and he's like, I'm telling you, this is the greatest season ever. I said, could you stop a little bit? I mean, really, I was getting defensive. I was like, Lindy's had some really good ones. And he
Yeah.
went forward and he wrote the story as the greatest season ever. Now, as I look at the resume, it's the greatest season ever in the NFBC anywhere in high stakes fantasy sports. Don't you agree?
Oh, yeah, I think so. I know there was the debate on Twitter. You're debating with was it the guilds
Yeah.
about what was the greatest. I didn't get involved. I mean, I was just happy that everything was working out, and I'll let people defend my season. But
Yeah.
I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, when people were starting to say that, I was like, Lindy, I mean, he won the online championship and the main one year. I mean, he was dominating
Yeah.
people. Our fields are bigger. I mean, the online championship was 2,388 teams. You took second in that one. You know, the auction championship 120. I mean, obviously it was great. You're now ninth on the career earnings list in the NFBC, $387,500. I do have one criticism of you though. You're only 33 years old. I mean, how can you know anything about baseball at the age of 33?
And I've been playing fantasy baseball for 5 years now.
Yeah.
So
Two criticisms. You're too young and
yeah,
you haven't been
yeah,
playing long enough, right? So,
yeah,
all right,
yeah.
I'm staying with Lindy then. He's older and he's been playing a lot longer than you, all right?
Well, it's funny because despite the great season last year, I feel like I need a good one this year just to back it up. Because
Sure.
if things don't go well this year, I feel like not that last year is going to go to waste, but I feel like I need this one to make
Yeah.
the last one legitimate.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. All right, let's talk about the robot name, okay? People are talking about you're the robot. Now, I look back, you named your team the robot in 2020. So this
Yeah.
just wasn't last year, it wasn't mid-season or anything like that. What's behind the name? Are you a robot? Are you a human? What's going on?
Well, you can see I'm human. But in 2020, I started doing podcasts, and Dave McDonald, who's another high stakes player,
Yep.
gave me that nickname just because everything, all my preparation is all formulas and it's all automatic. And he kept asking, "What do you think about this guy?" Well, I'm going to check my formulas. I'll tell you what I think about this guy. And then since then, I've sort of evolved where I try to put more of my personal opinions in it. Obviously, for closers, I have to, and I think it's the reason I won last year. I was able to find closers in Fab, and you can't have formulas for closers. It's just hard work looking at box scores and
Right.
instincts and experience, and I've gotten that over the past 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
But I still kept the nickname because I don't know. I guess people know me as the robot now, but I don't really use it other than for my team names.
So you like it or you don't like it?
I'm okay with it.
I wouldn't mind being called the robot. That would be
Yeah.
all right. So, all right, let's talk about your background in the NFBC because we want to talk to people who are looking at this for the first time, don't really know about the NFBC. Again, you just joined us in the first year was 2017. You're actually new to this. This is our 19th year right now. This is going to be like your 6th year. You joined in 2017. I saw you joined a $400 Draft Champions League and you won that one, and you joined 2 main events and you won both of those.
Yeah.
Or no, you finished second. You finished
Yeah,
second in both of
yeah.
those. Second in both of those. Talk about 2017. How did you find out about the NFBC? How did you join? Why did you join?
I'd read some books about, so I knew about the game fantasy baseball, but I never played in home leagues, anything like that. And then I listened to Chris and Jeff on Rotowire.
Chris Liss and Jeff Erickson. Yep.
Yep. And then I just heard them talk about the NFBC. I'm like, this sounds cool. I could do this. It's baseball. It's stats. I built some Excel sheets trying to figure out how to gamble on MLB games without that much success. But I was intrigued by the Roto game. It's like a new challenge. And then when I heard them talk about it, I just jumped in probably pretty late. I think probably mid-February I joined the 400 DC. Mm-hmm. And did you check who finished checking in that $400 DC?
No, I didn't.
I'm pretty sure it's Casey Cha.
Oh, so really?
Yeah.
That's a good learning spot right there.
So my first ever draft, $400 DC, I beat KC Cha. So that's kind of cool. He got me back last year.
So what got you to jump into the main event and 2 main events then? I mean, you're 20-some years old. You're married. That's kind of a commitment there.
Yeah, I was going to do just one that year, actually, and I split the entry fee with my brother. So I figured $850 each, and my business was doing well at that time. So I had some money aside, but I was going to do just one. And then Madison Bumgarner was our second round pick, and that's the year where he got hurt in spring training, probably like 3 or 4 days after we drafted. So let's do another one, because I don't want my first big baseball draft to start with an injured player. It kind of sucks. So I did another one, and then that one worked out well. So yeah, that's the reason I joined too. But yeah, it was a big commitment at the time, but I could afford it, so I figured have to join the main event to get started with the big boys.
Cool, very good. Okay, so now just to let everyone know, it doesn't all go rosy every single year. In 2018, you joined 4 main event leagues, and you didn't cash in any of them. Talk about that experience and what you learned from that one.
That was back to reality,
Yep.
because the first day went well. My one of them in the first year finished 12th overall, and I think at one point I thought I had a chance to win it. Made one mistake in Fab that cost me. Spent everything on Malik Smith, and then
Mhm.
I ran out of money for Reese Hoskins, who was the big. He probably had like 20 home runs in the last
Right.
2 months, something like that. So,
Right.
and then 2018, I used the exact same process. Didn't really do any more research. Did everything the same, and didn't cash an A. So it was just sort of telling me that what I did the first year was sort of lucky, and if I wanted to get better, I had to really find ways to improve my formulas, find an edge somewhere rather than just what I've been doing.
Mm.
And that's what I did. 2019, spent a lot of time in my formulas, just digging deep, looking at stats, everything. And that's the year I went to New York. So
Right.
went 2019 was the all in year where I'm going to live the experience, to go to New York, spend time studying players and all that stuff, and it was worth it, and I've been hooked ever since.
Yeah, I don't want to give Chris Liss any more credit than he deserves, but you did want to come to New York. You did want to
Yeah,
meet him. You did want to compete against him in his league,
yeah,
correct?
yeah, I did. Yeah, I'd listened to him on the radio for probably 2 years since I started playing in 2017 and 18. So
Hmm.
it's one of the reasons I went to New York and do that Sunday morning main event, which has
Right.
like a home league feel to it.
Yeah, that was fantastic. That was a great time. Everybody was in a good mood. We had three mains on Saturday. Like you said, we had the main on Sunday, and everything was good. Okay, so 2019, uh, you won one main event. You finished ninth in another. You finished second in a $1,500 online championship league. So again, a better feel. You feel like the process was working at that point, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And I won some DCs that year as well, I think. So it was a good one. I think I won something like profited maybe 15 or 20,000 that year. So that's the
Hmm.
year that sort of gave me a good bankroll to start and
Yeah.
start investing more. But yeah, I that's the first year where I really started to like feel like I knew what I was doing. Knowing, have a better idea of what to expect in Fab,
Yeah.
who to spend on, better idea of the bids. Because the first year, I was honestly just guessing.
Yeah.
And there wasn't as much content back then. So, not as many articles that tell you what players are expected to go for, not as many podcasts where you can get a feel for the market.
Hmm.
So, you back then, you needed the experience to get that feeling for the Fab.
Yeah. What was your feeling of the community of the live event? I mean, New York is so unique. You got
Yeah.
MTM who's ripping on everybody. You got that ultimate there. Everybody's ripping on Chris too. I know exactly where you were sitting because we had those long U's, if you will, and you
Yeah.
were at the back end where that had extra room, and you always wanted that spot
Yeah.
there. And it just was. I mean, I was there too, and it just was such a fun feeling, and everyone was ripping on each other, having fun, and then going out afterwards and such. What was your experience there?
I showed up on the Friday night. I think my flight arrived in the afternoon. On the Friday night, I went to check out the draft room.
Mhm.
And right before the MTM, I think there was an auction.
Yep.
And I was doing the auction on the Saturday afternoon. And when
Yep.
I saw how quick the auction was, I freaked out. And I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anyone. So I didn't talk to anyone in the room. I was just standing in the
Yep.
corner listening. I'm like, all right, I got to go back to my hotel room and figure out a better process to improve my spreadsheet, because that goes quickly. And doing the control F and finding players, I knew that wasn't going to work for an auction. So
Yeah.
I figured out something else. And then Saturday morning, and honestly, Friday night, I was sort of, I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't know anyone. I'm shy. English is my first language. So I'm like, am I really going to make friends and talk to people? So Saturday morning, I sit down my main event. And again, not really talking to anyone, sort of shy. And then Ryan Bloomfield sitting right next to me. And then draft starts. And then I think probably my first 3 or 4 picks, he looks at me, so a nice pick. I felt like I was sort of sniping him a little bit. And then at the first break, we started talking. And that's probably the first conversation that really
Mhm.
made the experience better for me in New York.
Yeah.
And then talking to Ryan and just talked to a bunch of other people. I think we sat down and talked for half an hour
Yep.
or something like that afterwards. So
Mm.
talking about the future NFHKC, I believe that you were
Yep.
looking at launching, and
Yep.
what might work and all that stuff. So
Yep.
and that's, yeah. So that first conversation with Ryan sort of opened things up and maybe reach out to more people, talk to more people, and that's really what the whole New York experience is about.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't even, when I think back to that, I don't think of you being shy or being out there. I just remember you being over there and people talking to you and commenting and such, and you interacting. And I knew that was your first time there, but
Yeah.
that's cool.
And for that auction, the auction on Saturday afternoon, right after the main, I was sitting, as you said, at the end of the table, and
Right.
I bought, I think, 3 of the first 5 players that were called up. I got, it was Trout, Scherzer, and Ramirez, I believe. So 3 of the first, probably 3 of the top 5 players that year, and some of the first that were called up. So Chris List looked at me, and he just said, you have to get 20 more players in this auction. Yeah, I know what I'm doing.
Very good, very good. All right, let's just talk a little bit about the 2020. It was a sprint main, obviously. You were planning on coming to New York, I believe, for that one. We had the auctions all sold. Tom and I actually flew there on Friday the 13th, and everything blew up at that point. But you ended up in, I believe, 6 main events that year. You won 3 league titles. Obviously, you were hooked with the process at that point. You knew that what you were doing was right, even in a shortened season, correct?
Yeah, and I think that the shortened season probably gave me a bit of an edge. I did some studies to figure out what works, what's predictable in a 2-month period, and I really invested in starting pitching and closers, and that paid off. I think that's a big reason why I won 3. And it was intense because even like 2021 felt really weird compared to the 2020 season. It was such a sprint, and the last day everything was up in the air. I was leading 3, but one of my teams went something like 5 for 45 on that last day. And like a normal season, it does really matter. But in a sprint season, it's like 2% of the season where you're having a horrible hitting day. So, and I barely hung on to that one. But yeah, it was weird. I hope I don't want to have to do a short season again. It's no fun.
Yeah, we all hope that, especially this year. So, okay, I'm going to talk about your 2021 main events, but the one I really want to talk about is your auction championship title. First of all, you weren't even there in New York City. I was the auctioneer for that $2,500 one. I see Rob DiPietro sitting down there. He's got his Bluetooth in, and he's like, "I'm going to be on the phone with Phil," and I'm like, okay. And as an auctioneer, because of the pandemic, I couldn't walk around the table, and the table was twice as big as it normally is. So this thing's huge. And I knew I was going to pause a little bit to make sure that you got your players or whatever, but it went seamless. And Rob did a great job, and you knew what you wanted and such. Just talk about that. I mean, what a weird experience. You win the overall, and as an all-star cast of people in New York City. You got Gecko and all those guys. It was a fantastic group. Sean Johnson is there as well. Just a great group. And you end up winning that. Talk about the experience of being on that. And as you said, it goes fast, and it did, but you held up.
It was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever done. It's just and like sitting in my little computer chair here for 4.5 hours, just my head forward, my neck was hurting afterwards, just so focused and an auction is already really hard. And I was like spending half my energy trying to hear what players were getting called. But Rob did a great job. I was sharing my screen with him and just pointing players, writing down bids, things like that. We found a system that worked. And I was just at one point, probably 30 minutes in, my internet connection stopped for about 15 seconds while we were bidding on a player. It was Trevor Bauer, actually. So it might not have been a horrible thing if I didn't get him, but
it was a sign from above, sir. It was a sign from above.
So, yeah.
He knew how he was off the playing field.
I ended up getting Bauer anyways, but yeah, it was, and that was the first time ever where I called a player that was already drafted. I'm usually really focused. I know who's been called. I write everything down. That's the first time ever where I called a player that had already been drafted. But yeah, it was nerve-wracking. It was hard. And the funny thing about that auction is the way it worked out. I knew all the players that were going so far were a little underpriced. I was expecting some inflation. And when that happens, you just call up the players that you like because you want to get them out there while the price is cheap. But when I'm at home and Rob's calling the players and I'm just calling players I like, it seemed way too obvious. I was trying to mix it up, but then I knew the inflation was coming. So I'm like, and none of the guys I like were getting called up. None of my targets were getting called up. So I'm like, I got to call my players, even though it's going to be obvious. And I think Rob told me that you told him that
I did.
like you figured out like he's just calling players he wants, but that wasn't the plan at all. I was going to mix it up, but I knew inflation was the bargains were right there, so I had to call my players and just bid, even though it was obvious. And that part kind of sucked, but it's what happens in an auction. You have to adjust.
He was kind of hide it because he would call them out, let's say for 4, and then the bidding would go, and then he would jump in at the end, and then he would get the player. I go, oh, I see what's going on here. So. But he was doing a great job between you and listening to me and trying to talk to you without being too loud too. That's one thing. This works, but that person has to talk quietly, and I've been that person many times, so I know how that goes. So
the sharing the screen over Zoom really helped because he could type. Sometimes he was talking really low, and then sometimes he'd just type me something if he had a question or something like that. So that made it like we had 2 ways to communicate, so it made it a little bit easier that way.
All right, so that was your first national championship that you won. Great job on that one. Let's talk about the main event. Again, you had 3 really good teams, 1st and 3rd overall and 21st overall. Let's talk about that one that won it all, the main event. And I'm just looking at it. You had the 3rd pick in that one. You took Jacob deGrom. Yeah. I mean, the guy was just phenomenal. He was definitely the #1 player until he got hurt. Talk a little bit about what your strategy was when you knew you had the 3rd pick and what you were looking to do there.
When I got the 3rd pick, I was actually expecting to have to go Tatis because in most mains it was going to Grom and Cole 1-2, and I was actually targeting Cole, hoping I put my KDS 1-2-3, thinking there was maybe 50-50 chance that Cole would make it to 3, and then ready to go Tatis and then build a different build I'd done in the past, but it went Acuna Tatis 1-2. And then deGrom was sitting and I had 0 shares of him. I figured I had a lot of Cole in other drafts. So I thought it was a good chance to take deGrom and see what happens. I think Cole would have worked out as well, but deGrom was just dominant for the time he pitched.
All right, let's talk about the build here. 6 of your first 10 picks were pitchers. You took deGrom in round 1. Raisel Iglesias and then Trevor Rosenthal in rounds 4 and 5, Charlie Martin and Kevin Gausman in rounds 7 and 8, and Pablo Lopez in round 10. So 6 out of your first 10. Talk about that strategy. That's not something everyone does in the NFBC.
I don't go heavy. I go heavy pitching usually, but I don't usually get that many pitchers. The 2 closers I wanted to get, just because I feel safer with the closers. Rosenthal sucked, and had to make that up in Fab. The other 3 pitchers, more than that, probably got around ADP, and then Gausman was just slipping. He was a big target for me, so I just grabbed him because I can't pass up a target after ADP. And Lopez was the same thing. Another guy I was sort of looking at, but he slipped, I think, a round or 2. So jumped on him. I think the NFBC, you can never have enough pitching. So when in doubt, if there's a guy I like, I'll grab the pitching and figure out the hitting later.
So you didn't go in there thinking 6 out of my first 10, I'm having pitchers.
No, I usually go at least 4 or 5. The 6 was just a bonus because he was slipping. If Gausman wasn't there, I'd probably take Lopez the round before and then move on to hitting after that. But you have to adjust on the fly and grab the value where it is.
Absolutely. And then you really killed it, though, with starting pitchers. You got Robbie Ray in round 17, Logan Webb in round 22, Carlos Rodon in round 25. Sean Childs did a really good reflection of your strategy and in your in-season pickups for SI.com. Check it out if you can. It was really well done. But like you said to Sean, you didn't have to chase starting pitchers in Fab at that point. You were really set. I mean, we can talk about Rosenthal later and what you had to do, but that draft solidified your starting rotation, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's all about starting pitching depth. And you can try to draft 15 pitchers if you want, but you have to hit on all the good teams I've had in the past are ones where I just have 5 or 6 guys that I can put in every week, not worry about it, and then maybe play matchups with the last 1 or 2 spots. And there's no good matchups you can put in a reliever. But you need pitching depth, and you have to hit on the late pitchers. And that's what made the deGrom injury not so bad, because I got the deGrom elite ratios, and then I had enough pitching depth to just fill in for deGrom after that. So the injury wasn't even that big of a deal for me. Obviously, losing my first-round pick sucks, but having the depth to make up for it. Because if I don't have that depth and I have to pick up a stream of pitcher in Fab every week, it changes the whole season.
Yep. So did the process tell you Robbie Ray in round 17, Logan Webb, Carlos Rodon? I mean, Rodon, unbelievable year. I mean, Robbie Ray, Cy Young. What told you about those guys? I mean, if you liked them that much, you would have got them a lot earlier, right?
Robbie Ray pushed up quite a bit.
Yeah, that is
Earlier,
pretty high.
earlier in the mains, I think he was going in the 300s. And every draft I was doing, I pushed him up. And I knew who else in the NFBC liked Robbie Ray. Found some draft boards of previous mains, and I knew in some the Super DCs I had an idea of who liked them. So I knew if I wanted to had to push him up even more. And I just for me, for Ray, it was the strikeouts, the wins in Toronto, and if he can figure out the walks, he's got siding potential. Obviously, I didn't expect it, but I thought worst case scenario, the 2020 was just a weird season with the walks. It wasn't him, so I was expecting if he just goes back to who he was in 2019, he'd be a fine pick there. But I knew the upside was if he can just fix the walks, then he has Cy Young potential, and that's what happened.
Yeah. So talk about the Rosenthal. I mean, you ended up in pretty good shape in saves because you were continuously going into fab, right?
Yeah. Rosenthal injuries sucks. I had Presley ahead of him in my rankings, and I pivoted to Rosenthal just because Presley wasn't pitching in spring, and Rosenthal had just come back, pitched 1 or 2 spring innings. He was healthy. I drafted him, and then I think a couple of days later he goes on the IL. So that one really sucked. I think I had probably 10 saves in early June, something like that. Yeah. And then everyone was spending up on closers, and I'm be patient. Don't pay the 200 for Merriweather or all the high price. And at times I regretted not spending on Class A and Trevino. But I'm like, no, don't spend your fab. There's going to be bargains at some point. Trade deadline's always the place to get closers. And then the 2 weeks before the trade deadline, I was probably spending 2-3 hours on Sunday looking at who the setup men were, looking at the standings, who might get traded and all that stuff. Picked up some guys, including Kyle Finnegan, right before the deadline. And then I had decent amount of fab, and then picked up Alex Colomé, Dylan Floro, after it was Yimi Garcia got traded. And it was honestly, fab isn't that bad. My process is pretty good, except when I'm chasing saves. When I'm looking for saves, it's an extra hour at least every Sunday, and it's a real pain.
And that's why you drafted 2 in rounds 4 and 5, right? You want to eliminate that if you can, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I know I'm pretty good at picking pitchers and hitters, and I know closers is the hardest part because it depends on the manager, it depends on injuries, it depends on skill level, and the relievers we have, they pitch 60 innings a year, so it takes 3 years of reliever to have a decent sample size to know who's good and who's not. So that it's not my thing. So I figure I'll pay up, I'll get my closers. Then Rosenthal gets hurt, so I'd have to challenge myself and find another way to win.
And you did, But yeah, that's a lot of work. Let's just talk a little bit about fab. I mean, some people who are new to NFBC, they hear you spend a couple hours on Sundays. It's not easy. Fortunately, the software helps you a little bit, but talk about fab and how important it is. What percentage of the draft do you think is important to winning a league, and then free agent pickups as well?
It's probably the draft is more important, I think. Fab is probably, I don't know, 30-40%. Because if your team's bad, you can't make it up in fab, but you need fab to push your team over the top. And I think you can see that because every player that's good at draft champions leagues is also good in main events, and so you can see it's the same player. So the skills of drafting fab is different skill than drafting, but you can see the importance of drafting when you compare those two things. So draft's a bigger thing. But I found my process for fab. It's put the kids to sleep, and from 7 to 10 Eastern on the computer, and doing my Excel sheets, my formulas, looking at box scores, and looking at news and all that stuff. So
Yeah, there's a lot of wives around the country who hate me over the last 19 years because Sundays have taken away from family, and I realize that. We actually used to have Fab before the Sunday game. I think the deadline was 7 Eastern time,
Oh,
which
yeah.
ruined people's all day. And I was like, why are we doing that?
Yeah.
It's just the one Sunday game. Let's just do it afterwards. So we ended up changing it. But
Have you
so,
ever thought of pushing it back to like 10:30, 11?
well, we could. And I'm not against that at all. And in fact, for football, I think we should move it back as well because there's really no reason to have it at that certain time. I always felt that it would help East Coast people if it was at 10 o'clock, but I don't know. Maybe it should be a little bit later. I'm open for change if people want to change it to 11 o'clock. It's out there right now. It's fine by me. The software runs on its own right now. I mean, we used to have problems where we would have somebody have to jump in from work or whatever, and now it just works so good. So,
And it's so quick. Like even when I
right.
joined the first few years, it's probably an hour.
Yes.
Now it's literally like 3 minutes,
Correct.
and everything's up. And I think that's one of the reasons where you can probably push it back a little bit because a lot
Yep.
of people like to do the lineup right
Set
after
lineup.
Fab. But
Yep.
now it's so quick that even if you put at 10:30, 11,
Yep.
you put the results up 11, you can do the lineups and be done at 11:15, 11:30, and move
I
on.
don't disagree. I mean, it used to, and you could tell which leagues it was processing, and then going through the leagues, you'd see
Yeah,
some of yours. It's not like that anymore. The software is just boom, and it's done
yeah.
within 3 minutes. So it's good talking about that. We can talk about it. Let me just ask you one thing. So seriously, we've talked to some NFBC veterans who have said he's figured out the code. You can't beat Phil. He's figured it out. Now, people said that about Japinka a long time ago, about Sean a long time ago, about Lindy a long time ago. Have you cracked the code of fantasy baseball? Can anybody crack the code of fantasy baseball?
I know I can be beat. I think I have an edge, and I said it last year, and I still think it. I think I'm good enough in the main events. If you give me 3 teams, I think on average I'll be between 50 and 100.
Mhm.
So well above average. The rest of it, whether I finish 50th or first, I think it comes down to a lot of luck and things going on my side. And I look back at it. Picking up Joey Votto for $20
Right.
when he got hurt. Yeah, it's a great pickup. But if someone bids 40, I don't get Votto, and I
Yep.
probably don't win the main event. So
Yep.
it's little things like that. A bunch of closes I picked up. I needed like pretty much all those saves to beat Emmett, who finished second. And if someone outbids me on column, I get probably 10 fewer saves, and it's a lot closer for second place. So
Yeah.
a lot of things went my way last year. I think I'm, like I said, I think I'm well above average. I can build well above average, maybe top 100 main event teams, but the
Mhm.
rest of it just comes down to what goes my way that year.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting? In Fab, there are some times when a player isn't even your top Fab guy. He's a conditional bid, and he's
Yeah,
down there. I was looking up a football guy. I can't even remember who it was who won the overall this year. And Cordero Patterson, was like his sixth running back in week
oh, yeah.
two for
Oh,
$2. He missed Elijah, right? He missed a bunch of
yeah,
those guys, and he gets him for $2 and wins the overall because of that.
yeah,
It is a lot of luck, but you gotta be in there making conditional bids and being in the running for these guys, right?
yeah. Exactly. It's I can probably list probably 10 moves where if one move had got differently, I don't win the main event. So
Yeah.
it's, I mean, and there's probably some I missed that would have helped me be even better, but it goes both ways. But everything, a lot of things went my way. If I don't draft Robbie Ray, if someone gets him in the 16th, I probably don't win either. So it's a
Right.
lot of little things like that. You put the odds on your side, and then you hope everything breaks your way.
Yep. All right. A couple more here, some quick hitters. In the auction, a lot of people do 65% hitting, 35% pitching, sometimes 70-30 between that. Do you have a percentage that you try to allocate?
Uh, a little more pitching heavy. I
That's what I
probably
thought.
went something like 45 for pitching.
Really?
I know I spent up on Bauer and Giolito. I wanted my aces, and then
Hmm.
I got Gosman. So it was, I guess, two pitchers of around 40, one around 20, a closer around 20. So I'm up to 100, and
Yeah.
then a bunch of pitchers in the 5 range or so.
And,
Um,
and again, that has really changed over the years. When I first got into it, it was really 67-33. Then it got
yeah.
65-35. I do see a lot of NFBC guys who do go 60-40, 55-45. So interesting. I wanted to take your take. I think you already answered this, but what is the hardest category to fill out of the 10?
It's save and stolen bases. They're the two independent categories, basically. Where if you get a hitter, a power hitter, he's usually going to help you in average home runs, runs, and RBIs. But those stolen bases, they come from different guys. They'll get the 5 category guys early, but you have to get those stolen bases early, and you have to have when you start a draft, have a plan for stolen bases, have a plan for saves, then try to figure out everything around those two categories.
Yep.
And the overall competition really makes it. That's what makes it interesting, because in the standard league, I'll aim for middle of the pack in saves and stolen bases and be fine with it. But if you want to win the overall, you have to be 80th, 90th percentile everywhere.
Right. So when you start out your draft prep, do you look at 80th percentile for all 10 categories, 90th percentile? What do you do when you first start out with your prep?
Yeah, I have an idea for my hitter targets, and I keep track of them during the drafts. For pitchers, I don't really pay attention. I just try to draft good pitchers and then have an idea of. I mean, I know you need 2 closers, then probably another half in fab. So I don't really, because like you can project. I can say Liam Hendricks can get 45 saves, but he could get 30, he could get 50. It's the hardest category to project. So there's not much point in having a target for saves. Just from experience, I know it's about 2.5 closers that you need to be up there.
Yeah, you can say 80. Well, you're not going to get 80 from 2, but you will probably throughout the course of the year and such. Talk about a little bit of the friendships. Like you said, you were shy. I know you're friends with a lot of people right now. What does that feel like when you win the title and people are texting you? You know, they want you on their podcast, but they like it because they're friends with you right now, right?
Yeah, it was great. And honestly, in the love started coming in probably in August, when I've been leading for a while, and I was up there by pretty good margin. I was just getting a bunch of Twitter DMs. So I'm cheering for you, Phil. I'm cheering for you. Hope you pull it off. And that I felt the pressure there, because I'm like, I don't want to let these people down. But yeah, it's great. I have a weekly chat with some friends with ideas for fab bids and all that stuff. So, and that one really helps. It's good to be part of the community and be on podcasts and make friends, and it's a big part of it.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys who have 3 or 4 NFBC competitors who they bounce off fab numbers and such like that together, right? I mean, that's nothing wrong, right? To have multiple people.
I mean, we all make our own bids, but
right.
If you have a chat on Sunday, it's like, oh, what do you think of this guy? Oh, did you forget this guy? Just make sure you don't forget anyone. And there's articles out there that, and then someone's going to say, oh, there's such person says this guy's going to go for 20. Someone says for 40. If you really want him, go for 45, go for 50. And we just bounce ideas off each other. But we manage our own teams, and we're not in leagues together. So we're just bouncing ideas off each other and try to get better together.
Yep. Talk about ADPs. How do you use ADPs, or do you use ADPs? I mean, there's no doubt the NFBC ADPs are the gold standard right now. People use them. How do you use them?
For early drafts, for draft champions, I'll play the chicken game with ADP. It's not the time to set min picks, but once I get the main events, I mean, if there's a guy I kind of want him, he's my target in that draft, I'll set him in pick, go 2-3 rounds before ADP. Now is not the time though. Wait till March to set min picks.
Definitely. All right, if you had the number 1 pick this year, I don't want to get all your strategies. I'm not going to do that today, but I got to. Who's number 1 for you right now? I mean, Trey Turner's going number 1.
Yeah, Trey Turner.
Yeah.
For me, it's Turner, Tatis, and Cole. 1, 2, 3.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to ask you just 2 more players. Bobby Witt. Are we going to see him right away, and can he be like this year's Bo Bichette?
I think we'll see him right away, because I think the MLB is going to fix that loophole. Everyone wants it fixed. The owners want it fixed. The players want it fixed. So I think he's going to get called up right away, and then is he going to be good? I'm not a prospect guy, but I mean, everything looks good. But the MLB is tough, so he could be a Jared Kelenic, or he could be a Juan Soto or Bo Bichette or whoever. Yeah.
Yep, definitely. One more, Wander Franco. Is he the real deal?
He's a better real life player than fantasy player. I'd rather have Bobby Witt, who has the fantasy tools. Whereas Wander Franco, I think he's a great player. He's going to be great, but I don't think the power is there, and I don't think he's going to steal that much. So, not for me this year.
All right. What about a prediction on the lockout here? What do you think is going to happen? We all know what we want it to have happen, but boy,
I think it's going to happen, because all the negative talk I mean, last week was ridiculous. The MLB makes an offer, and before they make the offer, the players have their response ready. They're going to say they don't like the offer. And even if the MLB offer was awesome, the players would have said, "No, we don't like the offer. We're going to try to get more out of it. We're going to pretend we don't like the offer. We're going to try to get more out of it." So obviously, the MLB is not going to make a great offer because they know if they make a great offer, the players are just going to use it against them. So you make a little bit of a move, you do something, players are going to say they don't like it, and hopefully the players come back soon with an offer that's a little bit closer. And then once we get to mid-February, hopefully there's a midpoint they can agree on. But I think COVID, it sounds stupid to say, but I think COVID might have saved us from a lockout because the players got lost, 60% of their pay that year. The owners lost a full year without fans. So both lost money. None of them is in a strong position to afford a long lockout. So maybe we miss 10 games, 15, 20 games. But I have good feeling they figure it out, and they
I don't think we're going to miss any games. I agree. It's too financially tough for anybody to just let the season go too long here. They're going to get something done. The players want it done. Legalize sports betting. There's so much money out there for the owners right now to have no games for 20 games, 15 games. I don't see it happening. They're both just going to have to bite the bullet a little bit and give up a little bit and get everybody in camp on time.
And the difference between, like, the last lockout was the NHL. And the difference in the NHL is it's 82 game season, and then playoffs are about, I guess, 28 games if it goes to the limit. So the playoffs are like 25%. All the revenues are made in playoffs. In MLB, it's 162 games, and playoffs are pretty short compared to the season. So you need the revenues from the regular season. You need the fans in the stand. You can't afford to waste half a season and get your money in the playoffs because you won't make it there. You're losing money from the season.
Yep, I agree. All right. Little advice for anybody who wants to join the NFBC. Throw it out there. Not so much, hey, you got to join. What would someone who's looking at this would like to do it but is unsure about joining this tough competition?
I think start with the qualifiers. That the OC qualifiers, the main event qualifiers that you guys came up with are just awesome. It's a way to get familiar with the system, an idea for fab bids with the exact same format that you're going to play in the main event. So it's a way to get involved, a much lower money commitment, understand the system. But I mean, I know, like, I do a bunch of podcasts, and sometimes what I talk about is scary because I have formulas and everything, but there's so many ways to win. Talk with Emmett, who finished second in Maine, with Chris Fessler, who won the online championship. They have a bunch of different ways to do their thing, and anyone can win. Just have to find what you're good at and start with the amount you're comfortable at, and just enjoy it. Join the community, listen to podcasts, go on Twitter, talk to people. Everyone's really friendly. The fantasy baseball community is awesome. You can, like, even when I started, I was reaching out to people who've been playing a long time, and everyone's super friendly. You can reach out to Vlad, to Scott Genstad, to Jeff Erickson. They're just great people, and you're going to feel welcome. And it's even better when you go live and get to meet those people in person. But yeah, that's it. Yeah. Enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. And you're absolutely right. We have $50 OC qualifiers. You can win a free online championship entry, $125 main event qualifier. You win that league, you get a free entry next year. So there are some good openings there. All right, finally, goals for this year. You can't win 22 out of 22 leagues, damn it. So what are the goals for this year?
I'd love to win. It's a goal I've set for a while. I'd love to win half my leagues. I think my win percentage is something like 55% since I've joined the NFBC. So I'd love to keep that above 50%. It's unbelievable when I think about it. 15 team leagues to win half of them.
Right.
But I'd love to just keep that streak going, and hopefully just have one team in contention for one of the overalls, whether it's the OC, whether it's the auction or the main. Just have one team that's in it for the overall. In the end, it makes the last few months really exciting.
Definitely. Well, remember, you're just a kid. You don't know a whole lot. So best of luck on all that. I see the sports memorabilia gear behind you. As you know, I was in the sports card industry for a long time, starting in the 80s. It's a booming market right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not big. I'm in the jersey business. I had my hockey jersey business been doing that for 11 years. I used to collect cards when I was a kid, but I sort of got away from that in the past 20 years. I see things pop up on Twitter, and I know it's booming, I know it's big, but I'm too busy with the NFBC to look at baseball cards again.
There you go. It's booming as well. I'm not collecting anymore myself, but it's great. Everybody's doing well, so let's just get the sport on the field, play the games, and everything's going to grow. Phil, I really appreciate you spending time here. Hopefully we inform people. Come join the NFBC. You can find us at playnfbc.com. Phil Dussault, the greatest season in NFBC history. I will concur. It definitely was. So, Phil, thank you very much. Good luck, and I will see you in Las Vegas, okay?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on and being the first ever guest. I'm honored.
You bet. Thanks much. We'll see you, Phil. Goodbye, everybody. We'll do another one soon. Thank you very much. Enjoy.